Macmillan Audio presents The Faithless Hawk by Margaret Owen. Read by Amy Landon. To everyone who is asked to burn, and instead decides to rise. And to my friends, you're not in this one either. They only let me do the cats now. The sun will rise, even from our ashes. Creed of the Black Swans. Waste no weapons, least of all your foes. Hawk Proverb. Part 1. Kings and Outcasts. Chapter 1. The Thousand Conquests. Fi was taking too long to cut the girl's throat. It wasn't the act itself. In the 3 weeks since taking charge of her band of crows, Fi had dealt mercy more than a handful of times. Tavin had told her last moon that killing never ought to get easier, but that it did anyway. Too many lives had ended on the edge of her steel since then to pretend that didn't hold a speck of truth. No. The sticking point now was the sinner girl. The girl had been sitting up on her pallet when Fi walked into the quarantine hut, dark eyes imperious, mouth set in a stiff bar, like the one sealing the door from the outside. Her short-sleeved linen shift was well made, but plain for the peacock governor's only daughter. Her black hair in a clean, glossy braid that hadn't yet frayed and dulled with fever sweat. A scroll had sat half unfurled across her lap. Just enough near-noon sunlight soaked the canvas-screened windows for her to read by. Fi reckoned the peacock girl was near her own age, somewhere closer to 17 years than to 16. But delicate rings of dark-veined rash had begun blooming at her temples, slight enough to be only hours old, damning enough to say the girl had only hours left. Minutes, now that Fi had come for her. Most of the time Fi found her sinners delirious, dazed, even dead. The sinner's plague never let any soul slip through its grasp, and it wrung even the simplest dignities from its victims along the way. Never before had a sinner watched Fi so, like she was a wolf, strolling too near a pasture. Fi ought to have left her mask on. Instead, she took it off. She ought to have drawn the broken sword. Instead, it stayed at her side. She ought to have told the peacock girl to close her eyes. Instead, she jerked her chin at the scroll and asked, "What are you reading?" The peacock girl leaned back, gaze narrowing. Her lip curled. "It doesn't matter. You can't read anyway." She tossed a small, clicking bag at Fi. "There, do it fast and clean." The bag was full of milk teeth, and when Fi fished one out, its spark sang loud and harsh in her bones. "Niemi Navali Zo Sakar," it declared. "Dulterav." Fi yanked her hand out. The tooth had been the sinner girl's, and it'd stay noisy until she died. Others in the bag kept quiet, but Fi picked out the song of peacock witches among them. The governor's dying daughter meant it as a bribe. "Not how it works," Fi said, tying it to her belt. "But we'll call it a tip. Just do what you're here for already." Fi shrugged, brushing her cloak aside in the same movement, and drew the swords buckled at each hip. One was from Tavin, the hawk boy she'd left behind, a beautiful short sword, wrought of finest steel, gleaming demurely in the diluted sunlight. The other sword could barely be called such, an old battered blade, broken half through, its end no more than uneven jags. A crow chief's sword, good for mercy alone. That sword had come from Pa, who she soon would have to leave behind as well. Fi didn't care to dwell on that. Instead, she held out both blades and asked, "Which do you want?" As the peacock girl's face turned gray.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?